should asylum seekers be allowed to work? Now, according to data obtained under the Freedom of Information laws, migrants arriving through the Channel have been discreetly granted the right to work in industries such as care, construction and agriculture. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should they be allowed to work? Honestly. Right, so let's see what my panel make of that. I'll start with you, Matthew Laza.
So I think they should, Nana. Let's just be clear. This is after the government has failed to process their applications for years. What I'd ideally like to see is applications processed in weeks, not months, and people who shouldn't be here sent home.
Yeah.
So that's obviously the ideal. Labour, my party, has pledged to employ 1,000 more people to process those cases. But whilst people are sitting here for over a year, let's get them doing something useful rather than sitting around in the hotels, which is where many of them hanging around on street corners, which is one of the complaints you hear from local communities, that because it's 93% of them are men, so therefore it's groups of men hanging around on street corners, which is what worrying you. They're only in these they're only allowed to apply. They have to apply for a permission to do this, and they're only allowed in shortage sectors. Care is one of them. I suspect most of them will be going into agriculture and be picking things in the fields, which is a massive shortage. So it seems to me that.
But what about the argument that this is a draw to invite more people to come and do that? You might be thinking, I'm going to get money from them, but in the end, you're going to have a load of people coming in for the jobs.
I think it would be more of a joy if it was from day one. The thing is, it's after a year. So you've had a year where you're not allowed to work, you're not allowed to earn any money, where you're on the £48.13 allowance. Now, and of course, when they're working, they don't get the £48.13 allowance, and they can stay in the accommodation, but they have to contribute towards the accommodation for their wages. So at least the government's getting some of the money back.
Yes, but what is the government's incentive to get them processed if they know they can get cheap labour?
Well, exactly. We've already got 94,000 asylum seekers still awaiting to be processed. I'm sorry, who is doing the safety checks here? We don't know where they're from. We know they throw away their official papers when some arrive. We don't know their background. They could be terrorists. They could be criminals. I don't want them looking after my mother if she's in care. Would you? Would you? And why hasn't this been commonly known? Did you know about this?
No.
Terrorists looking after our parents.
Well, that could happen.
But they probably wouldn't come down the migrant route. These terrorists would probably come.
Because they have the choice about working as well. So it's people who actually want to work rather than hanging around.
Well, hold on a minute.
I think you're going to be a terrorist, because you're already in the country. You'd go and be a terrorist. You wouldn't go and work in a care home at the same time.
Well, that's all right then.
But it's
I mean, it's not comforting, because we should be processing the applications so much faster.
But of course they should, and that's what the problem is with migrants waiting over 2 years to be actually processed is absolutely disgusting. And the thing is, though, it's shortening our own labour because they're being hard. I spoke to a builder friend of mine, and he's really disgusted with this because he said, "Who's going to, employ me when someone will do it for much cheaper?"
Well, Rakib did point that out, that it will undercut the actual labour market. So you end up with the same thing you had with the EU, except for these asylum seekers.
That's why I think it's important. I mean, I think first, Liz is absolutely right. It's outrageous the government has been keeping this quiet, literally. Only freedom of information requests, and I think the Telegraph this week, and yesterday, in fact, covered them. But what we need to know is that they're going into areas of the economy where they're not going to undercut. So particularly...
Well, in construction,
construction is more dangerous. I think agriculture they should be focused on, where we've seen that there are literally huge shortages because they can't get people to pick things in the fields.
This is a shambolic mess. The Home Office is a shambolic mess.
I agree with that.
And you know what? You've got to stick by the rules. People are coming over here illegally. That means they're criminals. I'm sorry. The government needs to get themselves into action. It's all talk and waffle, no action, and process them.
But they've come up with some action, though. The thing is, though, it seems that every time they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. Every time they come up with one plan that would potentially save us money in terms of their hotel bills and then everyone's saying, oh, no, they can't do that. So what would you have them doing? Because we haven't got the solution to the processing more quickly.
We don't know who these are.
So you just keep paying for them in the
hotels. The first order of any government is to look after its own people.
Yeah, that's true.
This is not being looked after, and it's not right that we're paying $8 million a day in hotels.
Well, that's why some of them get back if they're working.
To send them back to the UK territories, like South Georgia, the Falklands, do a detention centre and get them processed within days and send them back. And if they're legitimately fleeing from a war-torn country, which isn't France, by the way, then yes, let them stay. But otherwise,
the Falklands, I don't know what the population of is in the Falklands and places like that, but they probably wouldn't. How many? It's a few thousand.
I think, yeah.
They would overrun the Falklands, wouldn't they? And the people in the Falklands wouldn't want them there either.
There are other UK territories they could go to. we need to do something. This isn't the right solution. And I know, because I've had so many calls as soon as this news broke, saying, number one, they didn't know about it. MPs didn't know about this, and people are seriously worried, and I can totally understand
There's certainly
why.
going to be a lot of questions about it
There
this
are
week.
other countries, so I think in the United States people can work. There are other countries, although, having said that, you've seen the problem America are having with this 10,000 people coming in a day from their borders. So I'm in two minds with it, because I think, yes, it would be great if you could get people to work and do some of those jobs, but then, rather than them costing us, but I'm not sure whether it'll actually save us money anyway.
Well, look about the language barriers, the cultural barriers, all the other things that go into it, and the strain this is putting on our infrastructure, on our housing, on our schools,
I think we all agree
everything
that we
else.
want them processed
and they
much
will go,
faster.
They could just
That's why
go
Labour's got a plan.
disappearing into the economy. Let's look at this realistically.
Yeah.
This is not
Well,
safe,
they've already
and
disappeared.
it's not well to do.
Lizzie, they've already disappeared out of
do
the
you know what? I want to
5,000.
know why we weren't told about
No,
this.
I agree with you. I want to know that
really
too.
do.
Well, you know, you can't keep this secret because people think there's a conspiracy.
Well, there obviously clearly is some sort of conspiracy. And remember, out of the 5,000 migrants that they had, they had 700 that they could find. I mean, that's embarrassing. So I don't really know the answer to that, but I think, in my view, they just need to process them faster so they're not here for a year, so that doesn't materialise.
Exactly.
But let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by you guys, and thank you for that. I'm repeating myself. But this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show, tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's go to Bristol. The map is here.
Oh.
Yes. Heads won't roll, which is good. Let's speak to Lee Harris. He's a great British voice. Lee, what do you think?
Oh, it seems utterly mad to me, Nana. You know, not if we want to stop the boat, so no is the answer. You know, the government have been rightly telling us, along with the National Crime Agency, that we need an effective working deterrent. You know, if we want any chance of stopping this appalling, dangerous, criminal trade of human life. People are dying in the Channel. It's a huge security risk. It's costing this country billions, and it's fundamentally not fair. It doesn't take a genius to work out. This is where I depart from what Matthew was saying, although I like Matthew, but he's just completely ignoring the pull factor. It doesn't take a genius to work out that an effective deterrent needs to be part of an overall strategy. And at the moment, there isn't one. And the pull factor is already huge. Even France have been complaining that the UK is far too generous to illegal migrants, and it's making matters worse. The message is, come to the UK legally on a small boat, you'll get jobs and free or very cheap accommodation subsidised by the taxpayer. If they are serious about deterrence, this would be stopped immediately. It's also a huge security risk, especially for jobs being offered to illegal migrants in the care sector. You know, we don't know who a lot of these people are. It was only in November last year that security services alerted us to a manhunt that had been launched to try and locate 6 terror suspects that arrived on small boats. And, you know, the other thing I'd say is this is a cynical attempt to clear the backlog, and yet another example of the government not being serious about stopping the boats and controlling our borders. It's thoroughly depressing. You know, it's another broken promise by Rishi Sunak. And what I find...
They're all just, I don't know, I think they're breaking every promise. I mean, flip-flops. Doesn't he? Rishi Sunak, he's not really reached any of his promises. He's just a little bit too short to reach them. But he hasn't reached any of his promises. And then you've got Reform, who are doing... I just don't know where we go with this, Lee Harris. I really don't. But it's really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. That is Lee Harris. He's our great British voice. Lovely to talk to you. Crikey. So what do you think at home? Come on, give me your thoughts. GBviews@gbnews.com.